Hi friends, this is Sai and welcome back once again to my rooftop garden. Now I think the first doubt that all of you are going to be having is, Sai, where are the wooden boxes? We looked at your garden and we ourselves installed the wooden boxes, and how come you have removed it? So let me talk first about the wooden boxes, then I'll be talking about the potting mix. I mean how the potting mix looked once I had removed it from the wooden boxes, and what I did to create my new potting mix which has been used in these containers. And I'll be talking a bit about the temperature and the weather, the rainfall that we are having in Hyderabad, and how you should be using that to your advantage in whichever city you are in. So with that, let's start the video. So these are the wooden boxes. I brought them down. Now the issue with these wooden boxes is you can see that a couple of them are breaking. Now they have served well for 3 years, and if you look at the sides, it's still quite sturdy. There is no structural damage there. However, the issue comes when we are looking at the bottom. Let me just show you a couple of them so that you can understand. Here you can see how this is coming out, right? And here you can get a clearer idea. Now because some of these wooden boxes were not made properly, what happens is that when the weight of the potting mix, which in my case is quite light, but still with the watering and other stuff, what happens is that most of the weight as is expected gets to the down. This is the side which actually gets the most affected by the weight, right? The bottom is the one which takes in all the load which is there. So the sides are quite good, but the bottoms are breaking off. And because of this, in spite of the fact that I had put this plastic HDPE liner, what happens is that over a period of time there will be some holes and the water will start coming out, and you will be seeing that a lot of potting mix is coming out. You can see a bit of it right here also. So that is one issue. The other issue is that when these boxes are being installed on your rooftop, I had used something known as a jhula, which you can see here. This is what is used by painters to actually paint the outside of your building. So they actually stand on this and they do it. This is flat, and I had kept my boxes on top of it. Now what you can see is that this is also not flat, so to say. So because this is not flat, and the weight is now, because of these boxes, getting unevenly distributed, nothing much happens to this, but this will start having structural issues. And that's why if it was probably completely flat, we would not see so much of a problem, but this is the big issue which starts happening. So these are the two things that I noticed. The third thing which I have spoken about in my videos earlier is that based on the type of wood that you go with, if you go with a slightly more expensive wood, you can actually get this varnished, and therefore the life definitely gets increased. But if you go with a slightly cheaper kind of a wood, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact names of the woods, but this is definitely not acacia. This is probably mango or something less than that. What happens is that this won't take in varnish. We actually tried painting this, but it takes a lot of paint and a lot of varnish where it simply stops being economical beyond a certain sense. So these are some of the issues that we faced with doing this on the rooftop garden. Now it's not that these are all going to be a waste. I have found a new home for them, and it's my home only. They will be used in my garden downstairs, right? So when I do the complete installation of that, I'll be having a video on that. The other thing is that if you want to repair these boxes, that also gets slightly tricky, because now the wood is not as what it was 3 years back. So now if I try to again put in these nails and try to repair them, there is a very good chance that the wood doesn't hold and it starts to crack. So that's the reason why getting it repaired is a problem. But what I'm saying is that it all depends on the workmanship and the type of wood that was being used. So the statements that I'm saying are not true across the board for all the types of wooden containers. Rather, it is more of what personally I faced. So this is the potting mix which we removed from the wooden boxes. Of course, a lot more was removed, but this has been kept untouched. The plan is to do something special here, so I got it put into this syntex drum, this cut syntex drum, which you have seen me using earlier also. Now this is how this soil looks, right? It is, you can see how the texture would be by just looking at this video. Not too much of coco peat. Actually, you can see sparsely, maybe a bit of coco peat is still there, but most of it has, due to the reaction between the compost and the coco peat, most of it has now become very good soil. So this is actually quite akin to the soil that you see on farm, right? And this would be considered a very good soil if you were doing cultivation on farm. So this is what it has turned out into. Now, when I was making the potting mix for these containers, the intention is that I still require some kind of a nutrition. So I require compost or vermicompost, whichever is available. Of course, you can also use dry cow dung, but compost is always better than any dung that you can get. Yep, so they have started coming. I have a lot of these volunteer amaranths coming, and they tend to attract aphids. And this is where my natural army comes to help me out. Okay, so coming back to the question of the potting mix for this, what I did was that because I had lots and lots of this potting mix, the previous potting mix, what I did was that I used almost half of it for these containers. So half of it is that, and then the rest 50% I used coco peat and vermicompost, right? So that seems to be doing pretty well. Now, I am not generally very particular that it has to be exactly 50% or exactly 25%, because when you are doing it on a large scale, there are going to be a bit of plus minus 5%, and that's not a cause for worry at all, because this mix that I already had is very good, and I can just top it up with a bit of compost, and that would work fine. But the drainage, it seems to be having slightly excessive drainage than what I would prefer, and that's the reason that I wanted coco peat once again, because that would prevent that kind of a free drainage. The other thing is that this has now become very heavy. Okay, this bag itself is very this would be around 30 kgs, and you can see this is a typical size bag. And if in this bag by same volume I had a mixture of coco peat and vermicompost, it would have been almost half of its weight. So the point was that to have the structural integrity going on, the point was to reduce that and use coco peat, and of course for nutrition, compost was required. Whenever we are doing any sort of a design work, especially for a farm or could be for a garden, we are interested in understanding what the climate of that area is. So climate of Hyderabad, just let's look into it. Now, of course, I know how the climate of Hyderabad is because I've been staying here, but the methodology that I'm giving you can be used for you to design your garden in whichever city you are in, right? So this is how the temperature of Hyderabad looks like. So we've got peak summer months, and we've got months where we've got very good rainfall, right? Now what happens is, typically this is what happens in India. You've got summers, then you've got rainy season, then you've got winters, right? And that's how the temperature looks like. We've got the rainy season in between the summer and the winter, and rainy season is the time when the climate starts to cool off, and that is the time when you'd be seeing farmers actually going and doing starting up with the farm work, right? So nobody does anything in the summers. Once we know that the rainfall is going to come, it's at that point of time that all the agricultural activity starts. Now this gives us a vital clue as to how we could be setting up our garden. So this is another chart, and probably this is easier to read, where you've got the darker the color red becomes, the more the temperature is, and you can see the record high, the average high, and similarly you can see this for the rainfall. So June, July, August, September, October, these are the sweet spots that we have. Now please remember that these are the averages. Not every year is going to be the same way. And secondly, what we need to understand is that the climate is getting slightly erratic. So we are going to be having wild swings also, if I can say that, for the kind of rainfall that we are getting, right? And what you need to understand is that this is for the whole of Hyderabad. It might not be for the particular region that you stay in Hyderabad. So if you are staying in Delhi, or if you are staying in Jaipur, or if you are staying in Bombay, or any city, in your particular area there is going to be a slight change in the rainfall and the amount of rainfall that comes to your area. Okay, so if you are thinking of setting up a garden in Hyderabad based on this data, it is quite easy to understand that June and July are the months. June is the month where the rainfall actually starts coming. You've got good rainfalls from June onwards. So now getting a good rainfall is synonymous with having cooler temperatures. So if you are planning to set up a garden, setting it up somewhere in June, July is the best way to do it, is the best time to do it. And you can continue your garden till about January, Feb. You can actually have your garden going very well till Feb because of the cooler temperatures and the associated good growth in plants that you'll be finding, and the less amount of watering that you'll be having to do. But once you are there in the vicinity of March, and then from March till almost till June, you have to have your garden operating in a slightly different way. Probably you are going with green shade net, the combination of the plants that you are putting is slightly different. So these are going to be your critical months. These are going to be your best possible months. That is June. You set up your garden in June, July, and you can very well have it going on. You'll be having 2 seasons because typically most of the plants that we grow are 60 to 90 days. So we've got 3 months from June to August, right? And then from September till December, and then from December to Feb. So you have about 2 to 3 those 90-day periods where you can really utilize the garden and get lots and lots of productivity. So I want you to keep this in mind when you are thinking of your garden. I find lots of people getting interested by the posts and the kind of things which are being grown. So you would be seeing people growing broccoli and stuff like that, and you see that typically somewhere getting into harvest in Jan. And because the temperatures are cool right from December onwards till Jan, you find those things coming, and people get interested and they want to set up their garden in Feb or March. Now those are very horrible times to be setting up a garden. It's not just hot for the plants, it's going to be hot for you to be working in a garden. And these are the critical months where even getting water for watering your plants is quite tight. It is quite difficult, and there are many places which actually have water scarcity. So keep these things in mind when you are thinking of designing your garden. So what you can see this time is a lot more empty space than what was there the last time, because last time the density was slightly excessive. And what that did was that maintaining the garden and removing the soil which falls down was becoming very difficult. So the soil that tends to get accumulated near these stones that I have, it gets difficult to remove that. Okay, now with so much of open space, the first thing is that a bit of sunlight will always be falling, so it dries off the things fast, which makes it easier to remove that, because maintenance of your rooftop is extremely important. Because as I continuously joke that you have a rooftop garden because you have a roof, and if something happens to the roof, you're not going to be having a garden, right? The second was that I wanted a bit more open space so that I could travel a bit freely and probably sit down here and spend more time in the garden, more leisurely time in the garden. So that was another reason that I wanted to have more of an open space. And there are still a few more structural things which need to be put up. Probably by the second or the third video that I'll be releasing, you'd be able to see. I'm not really worrying too much about the trellises at this stage, because you can look at the general height of the plants and even of the climbers. It's going to take them some time for them to be visible also. For example, this is a pole bean that I'm having here, and of course there is a pole here, that's why I put it. But for the rest of the stuff that I have planted here, like bitter gourds, it's going to take a bit of time, and by that I would be having my trellis ready. The other thing is the sides still look unplanted. Whatever the planting that you see here is all that came volunteer. These are all volunteer creepers. Of course, a lot many more plants came, like this is a seal and spinach. This was a volunteer, and of course we get tons and tons of this amaranth. A lot of it I have removed it because this is exclusively going to be for climbers, and you can actually see a bit of planting is going on. You've got lots and lots of seeds. This is a sword bean, and this is of the climbing variety. Then you've got snake gourd, we've got sponge gourd, we've got watermelons. A lot of stuff is planned to be put into this, and let's see how the success is, because my garden has always been experimental, and if the experiments are good, then we all get benefited, don't we? So some of you might be wondering that you've got a lot many things going on here. What's the deal? What all is growing, and how are you going to be harvesting it? Well, all that will be covered in the next video. So till that point of time, just have a bit of patient wait. We'll be joining you guys very soon. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.